Italy. Okay, Dina, let's get back to some news that emerged this week with regards to Sandro Tonali. I'm sure you saw this story.
Yes.
That he has been charged by the FA for alleged breaching of their betting rules. From what the statement said, it was 50 bets that he has placed in his time when he was playing for Newcastle at the start of this season. As we now know, and as we know, he is currently serving a ban, a 10-month ban that was imposed by the Italian Football Federation for betting breaches when he was playing in Italy. He is allowed to train with Newcastle. He is allowed to play in behind closed doors games, but that is the amount of activity that he is allowed at Newcastle. As I mentioned, this is another charge then that has been imposed on him, and he has to respond later this week to those charges. I think Eddie Howe was saying last week that he has been compliant with all of the investigations, has admitted that he does have a gambling addiction as well. But we await to see what will happen in the outcome of this charge. Bear in mind, he's already going through a 10-month ban. What do you think would be the right course of action for him?
Well, are they side by side, or has he been caught in Italy and then fined?
They're independent.
Right, so he's already been punished for that, and he's missed games in Italy.
Well, here, because it impacted here.
Right, so what I'm trying to work out is...
It was a worldwide ban. It was imposed
if he's learned from his mistake. That's what I'm trying to work out.
Okay, so the ban happened after the betting that he'd already had in England, if you know what I mean. So
the punishment's all together. He's not had he's not been banned in Italy and then come to England and done it again.
No. It all happened earlier this season that he received that ban after being found guilty of those breaches in Italy.
Well, number one, if you play football, you know you're not allowed to bet before, you know that it's just a given. You're not allowed to bet on football matches.
Uh-huh.
But then I was sat in the car one day. I went to play in John Hartson's, good friend of mine, John, and obviously John got testicular cancer. And believe it or not, when he was still a young man, he had 6 tumours cut out of his brain and survived, right, John? And he's told me the story about how he felt in bed and he couldn't move his arms and he was thinking, that's it. And then we sat in the car one day. We were going from, we were in Scotland and we drove to Loch Lomond from the Carrick. Mm-hmm. And while we were in the car, he said to me, do you know that cancer wouldn't have killed me? It was the gambling that would have killed me if I hadn't stopped. He said? Yeah, he said the gambling would have killed me before the cancer. I said, and I looked at it completely differently. I said, how? He said, because I was just about to blow everything in my life and I would have got to a point where I had nothing left because I couldn't stop gambling. I was, you're chasing money all the time. You're having bets. And he said, I just couldn't stop it. And now I've had treatment and I've been for therapy and everything. And his wife gives him, I think, without talking out of turn, I think his wife gives him like a few £100 a week to live off. And he can't buy a raffle ticket. He can't have a bet. He knows it's an illness, and he's got over it. Mm-hmm. So I look at people who this lad must be in the same boat as Paul Merson had it. Mm-hmm. There's lots of players. Like I can have a little bet. I can have a tenner on a game of football, and I won't go chasing the tenner if it loses. I won't think, right, I've got to get my money back. But when you're compulsive, I think you have a bet. Say you lose £500, you're trying to get the £500 back. You have a bigger bet. And then you get to the end of it where it's like you're like a sort of obsessed with getting to a point where you could lose everything and you still put bets on. So I feel a bit sorry for him. He's going to get treatment.
He is. That was part of the sanction by the Italian Football Federation that he had to have treatment.
At the end of the day, as a footballer, you're not allowed to have a bet on the football. So if anybody else does it, it's your own fault.
Well, listen, he's not the first. We know Ivan Toney went through an 8-month suspension earlier this season, of course, and there are other players likewise that have had some sort of suspension. You've even had some players who have been found guilty, but their ban has been suspended. Harry Toffolo of Nottingham Forest had, I think, over 300 bets, for example. But the fact that he was so compliant with the investigation, they decided to give him a suspended ban. So just on Tonali then, do you think that, as I say, it's a completely separate case from from the Italian one. Hence why the FA have decided to charge him with these alleged betting breaches. In terms of what should be best for him, do the FA need to come down on him once again, like the Italian Football Federation? Maybe not to the same extent. I don't quite remember the amount of bets that he placed in Italy, for example. Or do you feel they could serve him with a concurrent ban, which would mean that if they now found him guilty, he could serve, a 2-month ban, but it would serve right now, let's say. So by the time the new season comes around, he would be free to play once his Italian football ban is over. Or what else do you think they could do? Or no ban at all?
If there's any if there's any footballers out there actually thinking of pressing that button, place bet, when you know you can't, you got a problem. You need to go and get help. Before you do it, don't press that button.
Yeah.
No matter how much you want to press it, you need to go and get help before you get yourself in this type of trouble.
Surely then the issue is the education needs to be better because players are still doing it.
Yeah, but I mean, no one knows they're doing it, do they? Because you can sit in your lounge watching the racing channel and put bets on, or you can watch the football. So there's got to be a deterrent because things have happened.
But my point, I suppose, is gambling in itself is not illegal here. So anyone can gamble. The problem is within football, you cannot gamble on football.
Yeah, and the reason is...
does the education have to be better? Are we not getting that message across?
Yeah, you need more education. And also, the reason why they had to put this in is because people are getting booked on purpose. Without naming names, people get booked. Players were getting booked on purpose. All their mates are on it. Booking, right. or giving a penalty away, or a few things like this started happening. So they, in all sports, spot betting in cricket, so they've had to stamp on it and say complete ban. You're not allowed to bet on the game.
Which is understandable.
So unfortunately, for those who just like a bet and they're not addicted and they just like it enhances watching the game, they're going to lose out. But if you're thinking, the main thing is he's in big trouble and they've got to put a deterrent in. I don't know how long the ban's going to be, but there's also what will happen is you got to look at his mental health, and is he going to go, fall off the side of a cliff because get even more depressed?
Well, I think he will have support, and he's been given support by Newcastle. There's no doubt about that. And like I say, the fact that he's allowed to go into training and be amongst his teammates is only going to offer him more support, certainly. So he has until Friday to respond to those FA charges. And as soon as we know what happens with that, of course, we'll bring it to you right here on talkSPORT.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.